Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the podcast Under Your Bed. Today, we have got an all-time classic coming out of Kubrick, The Shining, 1980, y'all. I'm your host, CJ. Sitting across from me is your hostess, Taylor.
Hello, hello, hello.
Welcome back, y'all. If you really don't know anything about The Shining, we're shocked and amazed. But it's basically about a family of three that are in charge of maintaining an isolated hotel in Colorado, I think, during its closed winter season. People can't get in. Too much snow, I guess.
Spookiness.
The isolation.
In a haunted hotel.
A little bit of like, psychological thriller horror at times. But, man, this is iconic. It's Kubrick, so people are going to have feelings about it. We have feelings about it. But Taylor, set us up. What's the cast we're working with? Let's get through some crew.
All right.
Then get into it.
We are absolutely going to get into it today, and we may win or lose some people depending on your feelings about this. I mean, the cast is, I'd say, pretty well known overall. I mean, you've got Jack Torrance, the patriarch of the family, played by Jack Nicholson. I mean, come on, guys, you don't know him? Come on. The Departed, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, A Few Good Men. He's Joker in the Burton Batman. There's a billion other credits we could list. And I'd say pretty much the same for his wife, Wendy Torrance, which is played by Shelley Duvall. She was definitely a part of my 90s upbringing. I assume much the same for many people. She's in Three Women, Annie Hall. She's freaking Olive Oil and Popeye. And Deep Cut, I don't know if any of you guys remember the 90s fairy tale theater that she did, but that is seared into my brain. A little bit lesser known. Oh, I'm telling you, you look it up, you will know. Danny Lloyd plays their son, Danny. And really, this was his only acting credit. He did do something for Dr. Sleep, but I have not seen that one yet. That is the next thing on my agenda to watch, so I can't vouch yet for that situation.
But he did crush it, in my opinion.
We're gonna disagree so bad on this one.
Whoa! Okay, let's go.
I'm really excited. Then we get... it drives me insane, not this performance, but just the treatment of this character. But Dick Halloran is played by Scatman Crothers. He was also in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. The frickin' Aristocats from I was going to say 90s. That is not the 90s. It's like the 70s. He did voices for Transformers. He was in the Twilight Zone movie. And then... kind of our last couple characters, really, Grady, who plays the former caretaker, is played by Philip Stone, who was in A Clockwork Orange, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and Flash Gordon. And our last kind of big-ish character is the bartender Lloyd, played by Joe Turkel, who is in frickin' Blade Runner, love it, Paths of Glory, and The Killing. So some nice mix of old school, new school. There's a lot of good films on everybody's list there. So very, very impressive cast and also a very, very impressive crew.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously directed by Stanley Kubrick. You know him, 2001: Space Odyssey, Clockwork Orange, Lolita, Full Metal Jacket, Spartacus, the list goes on.
All
right?
the movies, yeah.
And he brings around the usual crew that he likes. There's some returning regulars here. Editing by Ray Lovejoy. Was part of Aliens, 2001, Lost in Space, the Tim Burton Batman. Composition by Wendy Carlos and Rachel Elkin, both that worked on Clockwork Orange. Not sure what the relationship, how that, partnership worked, but there's some, we'll talk about the composition. It's a huge part of this film, I think.
Huge.
Cinematography, John Alcott. This is a big budget, big set film. So very interesting to see kind of like some traditional Hollywood work in there mixed in with some like unique style choices. But of course he was on 2001, Clockwork Orange, Barry Lyndon. Production design, Roy Walker, Eyes Wide Shut, Talented Mr. Ripley. Oliver. Art direction, Leslie Tompkins, Sleepy Hollow, Eyes Wide Shut, Fantastic Beasts. And then, we all know that this is based off of the book written by Stephen King. Kubrick, I don't know, probably felt like there'd be some artistic differences, perhaps, between him and the King. He chose to use Diane Johnson to help write the screenplay. So this movie is very established in the horror genre. One of those that I return to frequently. One that sounds like Taylor, where you're not landing as far on the love spectrum as me. I don't know. Where are we? Where are we, Taylor?
I have truly never in my life understood why people are so fucking obsessed with this movie. I get if we were scaling only on score, cinematography, production design, I would have no qualms. I wouldn't fight anybody about it being absolutely fantastic. It looks amazing. I am not here to dispute that. You're not going to hear me say that when we get to the spoiler stuff. Where I don't understand where people love this so much is primarily storytelling, pacing, and performances, which to me make up an important factor in filmmaking and good films. And I've never really got why everyone was so into this movie. But it's like, you talk to, so many people like top tier, it's in my top 5, in my top 3, it's my top a horror film. I've never understood it. Maybe you can convert me to mildly more in the middle, but CJ, I'm not going to say all the way, but what is it about this movie that is so absolutely fabulous that everyone is so obsessed with it?
I think what really drives the culty like nature of this film, like why people love it, are probably the iconic imagery. You have just some very iconic moments, like, well, okay, spoilers, so we can't get to it yet, but there's moments like the blood in the hallway, right? There's moments like the twins. There's moments like the door and the axe. Like, I don't think I'm spoiling anything there yet, but they're very iconic.
It's in the zeitgeist of culture. Yeah.
If you haven't seen the movie, you've seen those images for sure.
Or a period.
Exactly. So, I think that's probably first and foremost. One, I think another reason is Stanley Kubrick, just as the auteur that, he is, coming with this like very aggressive like approach to filmmaking, but then, there's some iconic cinematography moments as well. Like Jack Nicholson, kind of having some iconic moments. We can debate about his performance, but definitely some iconic moments. Is it the scariest film that I've ever seen? No. But it does it, evoke some like horror if you're, kind of trapped in a situation with, a lunatic. Like that's a kind of scary situation. So, I think those would be some of the reasons I would name as, why this has created a legacy. Curious your thoughts.
Well, I think too, there's always questions behind like Kubrick films, like everything is so meticulously done that if there's an error of any sort, then everyone's going to deep dive the ever-loving hell out of it to figure it out. There's literally a documentary made about the theories behind this, which is also odd to me because like it was a book first. We get that, right? There's a source material for it, but I understand they're more dissecting some of the. It's weird how it's shot because it doesn't actually physically work as a real situation. And so I get it's disorienting and it's that way on purpose. So I would never say that he's a bad filmmaker, perhaps a very toxic and problematic filmmaker, but not a bad filmmaker in the sense that he may put out a beautiful product. I will never, ever argue that. It is stunning to look at. Everything is set up. It's all very meticulous. I believe he got the product he wanted. I don't think that he didn't achieve that. Just for me, it falls flat in a lot of ways because of the choices that I believe he made, and which deviate hardcore from the book. And just to preface, I watched this movie pre-reading the book and didn't like it. Then I read the book and then was like, oh no, this has gotten worse now. So I'm not biased in that sense. I watched the movie first, just to clear conscience here.
I think it's all very fair. I would say that anybody could really watch this film. There's not an extensive amount of gore. It's not so scary that you're not going to sleep. I think it's a pretty accessible film for a wide range of audiences. I think filmmakers will also be able to like deep dive into this and, dissect the way they shot scenes and how they lit scenes and, directing decisions that were made. So there's a little bit there for everybody. So I recommend going to see this if you haven't. If you have, stick around for a deep dive because I think we're going to really rip this open.
Oh, yeah.
Taylor, do you have a rating that you want to throw out? I haven't decided in my head yet where I'm at.
Oh my God, this is so hard. Okay, we want to start with scary or do we want to start with just overall rating?
Okay, let's start with scariness. Out of 4 monsters under your bed, how scary is this film?
I know for a lot of people, they saw a lot of the imagery before they even watched the film, and the imagery can be more scary than the actual film itself. And if that's like your experience, I understand that this is probably more of a terrifying situation.
Right.
But being a little freak as a kid myself, I was kind of like, oh, what's that? Bloody hallway,
Nice.
It's just, it feels kind of weird given that it is atmospheric, it is isolating, but in my opinion, that could have been done better. So I don't get super spooked by this film. It doesn't do a lot for me scare wise. This sounds like super harsh, but I'm going to give this one a 1. Yeah, I just don't, there's not enough gore, there's not enough body count or enough, like I said, atmosphere to really do it for me to push it up to the next level. But I do understand where other people would rate this one higher. It's just not for me. It's not going to get higher. How about for you?
Yeah, I'm going to land at a 2. I think, there's the bathroom scene, there's the hallway, there's the twins. I think those are moments that are, graphic enough that and disturbing enough that, a lot of some audiences will shy away in those moments. But wish there was more, I do wish there was more. I think, in the climatic scenes near the end, probably could have been more suspenseful, would have liked to see a little more Hitchcock suspense in those moments.
Feels more comedic sometimes too. I don't know if it's like black comedy intentional or if it's like it just comes across that way because of performance. But yeah, I'm with you there.
Maybe part of it might just be because of like the way pop culture has ran with this. Like it's so iconic that it's been parodied and, like repeated and so you've just seen it so many times. Exactly. You've seen it so many times that you're probably a little numb to it anyways. But overall rating, Taylor, don't make me go first.
All right, I'll do this since we're going to lose people. I am literally only giving this the bump up in my opinion because it's so well made, and I feel like that's not fair for me to give it such a low rating because it is very stunning, and I cannot argue that. There were so many times I was like, what a gorgeous shot. How pretty is this? Oh my gosh, I can't believe the set design. Oh my gosh, I can't believe the color design. And that's all a coordinated effort. That wasn't just something that happened upon. These are choices that were made. So for that alone and the score, I will give it a 2. I don't really like this movie, though, and I found it slightly painful to watch, especially after reading the book. I struggled so hard at the end. I just found myself going, why would you make that choice? And so we'll get into those specific choices as we get there, but I feel like I'm being fair for someone that's not a huge fan of this movie. I have to take just a shot in the dark and say yours might be slightly higher than mine.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a solid 3.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, I think what kept it from becoming a 4 is as a horror film, it's just not scary enough, not gory enough. Not that a horror film has to be gory to be good, but
sure.
I think exactly. Like I would have liked more in that regard. I think cinematography wise, it was shot mostly by the book. There were some fun stylistic choices along the way, but nothing that like really went outside the box and like pushed the envelope in any way, which is something I like to see that would bump something up to a 4. In terms of style, like I thought it was really clean, but again, wasn't like pushing the envelope necessarily. So for all those reasons, but I think the reason it is a solid 3 is thematically Kubrick is so detail oriented. And I do think there are some very clear present themes throughout the film that really
Oh my God, that's why I
it.
hate it so much. Okay.
So,
yes.
It might be a divergence from, Stephen King's original vision, but that's the whole point of like, once you make it your movie, you get to do what you want with it. And that's what has become of The Shining. So y'all, stick around. We got a deep dive critique for y'all. And a pretty interesting potent drink. Probably pretty similar to this movie. So see you soon.
Welcome to the podcast Under Your Bed. There'll be drinks, critique, and perhaps a few murders. You're all invited, but once the podcast has begun, there's no way out. The ghosts are waiting, so won't you join me for the podcast Under Your Bed?
Yours was like so much quieter. Oh my God, I thought we were going standard. I don't know, you did a Duvall scream. I did like a real one. You did the Duvall like,
Yeah, the Duvall scream would have been like,
So, we hold the bat in the middle. It makes the most sense for protection. Just kind of whistle it around like a wiffle bat.
I'll knock your fingers. Yeah. All right. Well, normally I'd say story, but that probably is going to get a little deeper than we want to go right off the bat. Let's start with acting.
Let's start with our drink and our plot summary.
God damn it, Taylor. This is the second time I've done this in a row. Let's start with our drink, Taylor. Yes, right you are. Well, let me catch up with myself. This, in my hand, is red rum, a martini shot. Except it's not a shot.
Isn't it?
And, I'm sorry, by the martini
I thought
shot.
you were saying the name. I'm like, I think I got it right.
Yeah, no, sorry. The red rum by Martini Shot. Thank you very much. This is a potent drink. It is basically spiced rum and Fireball or any other cinnamon whiskey. Did
you do spiced rum?
I used some good old Cap Mo with Fireball.
So I used dark rum, so I did Fireball and what is it, like Myers or something?
You're right. It is supposed to be dark rum. That's
no. You can do both. You can do both. So I was curious though how yours tasted compared to mine, because I actually thought mine tastes really good. I thought it actually is really nice and more mild than I thought it was going to be. But yours is spiced, so I'm curious what yours tastes like.
It's a spice overload. I think dark rum was probably the best way to do this.
All right, guys,
but it's just
it's
fine.
good.
Yeah, it's just fine. You crush some cherries up in it. You got the Michigan like high-end boutique cherries over there.
I did. I had bourbon. I had like specialty bourbon cherries for mine, and they're really good.
I'm jealous. I smashed some maraschino cherries in there, or however the fuck you say that.
You did the low-end cocktail. I did the higher.
Yeah,
end.
Exactly. So I'm just pass and go here, but I think it's drinkable, and I'm gonna feel this. I'm probably feeling it already, but the drink is probably as mixed feeling as the movie. But before we dive in,
that is so funny. Mine is so good. I'm so sorry.
All right, well, maybe we flopped how much you like the drink compared to how much
we
I
did
like
with
the
the
movie.
drink in the movie. It's kind of perfect. It works out really well.
Well, sit down, grab a drink. Cheers to y'all. Let's get a little spoiler summary review, Taylor.
All right. This is okay. We got it. All right. Okay, so we open on Jack Torrance interviewing for a job as a winter caretaker for the Overlook Hotel. Jack is informed that the hotel will be vacant for the winter season and that in the 1970s, the former caretaker Charles Grady killed his wife and 2 children via axe murdering and then shot himself. Fun. Despite warnings about cabin fever, Jack takes the position, hoping that the quiet will help him finish his novel. As Jack informs his wife, Wendy, about the job, their son, Danny, has a horrifying premonition about the hotel resulting in a seizure. While seeing a doctor, Danny states that before he passed out, he was talking to his imaginary, quote-unquote, friend Tony. Wendy also discloses to the doctor that Jack, in a drunken and angry stupor, broke Danny's arm and that he has been sober ever since. We are going to have to talk about how she discusses that when we get her to her sweat, because I was shocked.
Classic 80s wife there.
Very concerning. The family arrives on closing day where they meet Chef Dick Halloran. Love him. Dick and Danny immediately connect, recognizing that they both have the shine, a telepathic power of sorts. Dick tells Danny the Overlook Hotel also shines and to stay out of room 237, the notorious 237. Over the following months, things deteriorate as Danny continues to see the Grady twins. Jack experiences writer's block, causing him to become agitated and short with his family, and the winter storm leaves the group more isolated than ever. As after Danny enters room 237, he emerges almost catatonic and bruised. Wendy immediately blames Jack, which I feel is appropriate given that he just finished telling her he dreamed about killing her and Danny. So, fair. That seems, I get that. Feeling frustrated and alone, Jack heads to what should be an empty bar, only to find Lloyd, the bartender, with a fully stocked supply. And subsequently, he chooses to end his sobriety. All right, Jack's chat with Lloyd is disrupted by Wendy, who states that Danny has come to, claiming to have been attacked by a woman in room 237. Jack inspects the room to find a young naked woman who seduces him into a makeout session, which abruptly ends when Jack realizes she's a bloated, rotting, walking corpse.
Not a good look.
Super hot. Super hot. Despite his experience, Jack denies any concerns tied to the room and chooses to blame Wendy for all of his issues. Just a straight up dude there. Good man. Meanwhile, Halloran receives a distress call of sorts from Danny while he uses the shine. Halloran immediately seeks to make an arduous journey to the Overlook. Having enough of his family, Jack enters the ballroom of the hotel where a party is in full swing, complete with the hotel's ghosts, including former caretaker Grady. Grady states that Jack has always been the caretaker over the look and must stop Halloran's intervention. Grady states Danny's abilities are important to the hotel and that he and Wendy should have a good talking to, a.k.a. he should probably kill them. Jack starts by disconnecting the hotel radio. Wendy decides that she and Danny must leave as Tony, who seems to have taken over Danny, begins to murmur, "Red rum, red rum." That's what we should have done. We should have done that. Too late. What can you do? The next day, Wendy attempts to talk to Jack, finding that his novel consists of the phrase, all work and no play make Jack a dull boy, repeated over and over and over and over.
And over.
Jack, and over. I give him credit that it wasn't just like a full line. Like, there's indentations. It looked good, to be fair.
It did make it look nice. He has aesthetic
He
taste.
made it look nice. Jack finds Wendy and states that he's going to kill her, resulting in her hitting him over the head with a bat. I said over the bat with a bat. Over the head with a bat. Well, he's semi-conscious. Wait, that's not right. A semi-conscious. Hang on. What did I do here? I fucked this one up. Okay. All right. Jack finds Wendy and states that he's going to kill her, resulting in her hitting him over the head with a bat. While semi-conscious, Wendy drags Jack into, oh my God, how the fuck do I say this? Hang on. While Jack is semi-conscious, that's what's wrong. I'm putting it in the wrong spot. All right. Jesus Christ. Okay. While Jack is semi-conscious, Wendy locks him in the kitchen fridge. However, shortly after, Jack is released by Grady on the condition that Jack finally takes care of his family and proves his worth to the hotel.
Indeed.
Wendy awakens... Yes, big time. Wendy awakens to realize red rum means murder. It's backwards. See? Just in time to see... Just in time to see Jack axing his way through the bedroom door. Wendy manages to get Danny through the bathroom window, but finds herself unable to escape, hindered by the snow outside. The sounds of an approaching Halloran send Jack away, who immediately kills Halloran. And I have thoughts, and we will get there. Danny then makes... So many thoughts. Danny then makes his way through the hotel hedge maze with Jack in close pursuit. Danny decides to trace his steps backward, leading Jack to follow the wrong trail.
Tricky.
Very sneaky for a kid, and I'm very impressed. I give him a lot of credit on that one. Wendy and Danny reunite outside the maze and leave on Halloran's snowcat. The next shot is of a frozen Jack, and then we end with a shot of the Overlook Hotel, a photo on the wall, showing a 4th of July party from 1921, with Jack front and center.
Dun, dun, dun.
And that is the end of The Shining.
And which, honestly, I don't entirely understand. Like,
no,
what? He's reincarnated. He's just always... I don't get the last thing, to be honest. Help me out, people.
I think
Help
a
me
little
out.
bit, yeah. A little bit makes more... It's slightly more clear-cut in the book, but I would also say it's up to massive interpretation, which I'm sure is hugely responsible for the billion theories that go behind this movie.
Maybe, I don't know. Where do you want to start? Ending, acting, we were suggesting. Let's start with the acting.
Yeah, you know what? We'll parcel it out with the pros and cons. Because if we do the ending and the acting right in a row, it's just going to be very harsh on my head. So let's parcel things out.
Our audience in the face.
Let's start with the acting and characters in particular. So obviously I've not secretly hinted my feelings about this. I don't think that Nicholson or Duvall are inherently bad actors. I think they're great actors, actually. In just my personal opinion, this is a complete miscast for everybody. Nicholson, to me, is unhinged from the get. There is no progression in his character. He comes across as super off-putting in the first meeting, and at no point do I believe this is a functioning family unit or even dysfunctional family unit. But I don't even think these people like each other. There's nothing that gives me the warm fuzzies or makes me feel like I'm rooting for them or I'm invested in their story. I mean, just starting with Nicholson, I guess I kind of jumped the gun on that, but just starting with Nicholson, what are your feelings on it?
Wow, that's pretty sharp. I think it's hard to argue. Like, you're right. The family dynamics aren't very compelling, right? You start off the bat with the story of Jack, like, kind of being like a pseudo drunk and like
an alcoholic straight up.
Yeah. And but he's trying to make a change. He's not drinking. At no point does he like make a decision not to have a drink and then kind of breaks down and has a drink. He just like immediately has a drink, like, fuck it, So you're right. Like, I suppose, there's not exactly much reason to like him unless you're like, can empathize with being like, a creative that is trying to like find a peaceful, quiet place to like get your work done, and you're constantly interrupted by life. But that does not excuse his shit behavior. So you're right. That's in terms of story, but in terms of acting, I think Jack Nicholson was a bit mixed. At times his greatness came out. At times, I think he was a bit melodramatic, right? I think one of the moments that really stands out to me as like melodramatic was his monologue at the bar. It just seemed like, I don't know, like that was like when it first started, like when his character really starts revealing like how disturbed he is, and where he first has the moment to like really shine as an actor. And I think it's a little bit of a letdown. It's just so over the top. There was no subtlety to it. So I think that was a bit wanting. Now, I think there were moments though that got better. I think I actually liked when his wife, Wendy, by Shelley Duvall, confronted him at the typewriter, and he was like, fucking leave me alone. I thought he performed pretty well in that moment. Of kind of just being like this angry creative that needs a fucking drink and is sick of like his family. I liked how he portrayed that in that moment. But, that was probably one of the highlights. And then the rest of it, is just kind of him like going off the rails, which I think works just given the situation.
I don't mind the campier elements. I think they're actually pretty fun. Like him, saying like, I'm just going to bash your brains in. Like that's, It's kind of fun. Like I think there's a dark humor to it that I enjoy, but my issue is that energy feels like it's like all the way through. And again, to make a complete story here, you need to care about who this person is. And even the issues that he has, we don't get a full picture. Like, we don't see him getting into writer's block. We just see him throwing a ball around, which I get is to say he's avoiding the work. But, like, there's just not enough of that for you to really understand where the frustration and anger is coming from, because all we get is that shot. We're not seeing him struggling. We're not seeing him say this sucks. We're not getting any of that. And the hard part, too, is you don't get any on the front end of like a happy family unit that is clearly troubled because of his alcoholism. But that's the other huge part of it, is he doesn't struggle with that. And again, this is a bit of book stuff, just kind of on a minor book spoiler, but through the book, he's struggling with things that he used to do that like coincided with drinking, and he starts craving those things. Then he starts craving the drinks. And I understand it's a movie. You're not going to get into every little nuance, but because we spend so much of the runtime just fixated on the end, we lose any time to be able to establish some of that. And that's where I think, to me, is one of the most problematic elements, including that, and I hate saying it because I think she was so wronged in this movie, but she was not a good choice for this character, Shelley Duvall. Like, there's another huge issue for me. She's a great actress. This is not a good fit. I don't think she can deliver this.
Why?
She's so well, and again, this is Kubrick's choice, so you take it with a grain of salt, because this is clearly what he wanted. But you have this insanely docile woman that cannot hold her own. So even at the end, when she's kind of fighting back, and I use that term very loosely, it's very unbelievable, because he's screaming at her and snapping at her. And I get, like, when a loved one does that, you're like, Jesus, like, but usually there's some kind of like okay, or you have a little reaction to it. She's just like, okay. She's so meek. And I get, like, if this was like a battered wife situation, I could see her justifying him breaking the kid's arm and trying to, like, you know, not be like, oh, there's a reason he did that and he'll never do it again. But she's not. This was like an alcoholic who did this thing, and this is supposed to be the big turning point in their relationship where he gets sober. So for her to just flippantly be like, well, you know, it just happens sometimes where your husband gets too drunk and breaks your kid's arm. Like, what are we talking about? That's insane to me. That is wild. She's not a battered wife. It does not make sense to me in terms of, like, what she presents later is in terms of a mother that's protecting her kid. It doesn't coincide to me.
Interesting. I thought she was well cast for a, like, meek, timid, you know, character, and I think you know, that she kind of I thought the, like, battered wife, like, maybe she wasn't physically abused, but living in an abusive household, I could definitely see how she's, like,
or an alcoholic's household more,
yeah,
like,
exactly.
because I don't think he
so I actually really liked that moment that kind of, I thought, revealed, you know, some of her, you know, emotional detachment perhaps of, like, how she's coping with this by kind of, you know, it's just something that happens, like, you know, she's clearly, like, controlled or feels like she doesn't have power in this situation. And I would agree that she doesn't really have a moment where she takes a stand. She just locks herself in a bathroom. She tries to run away, you know, and that's basically it. That's her story arc, right? Like, I need to get my son away from this danger, and I run away. And at no point did she really, like, she's not a strong final girl by any means, right? But I did think her acting was probably one of the best performances in the movie. What moments did you not like? What didn't you like?
Really, all of it. Because one, there's not a single moment, I believe, until she's, like, literally physically carrying her kid away, that I believe this is a mother who really has her the kid's best interests at heart. And that's probably one of the only shiny moments for me where I was like, that's great. She looks completely beaten down and terrified by the end, but that was more because of a director absolutely aggressively just killing her brain. It was just, awful.
Well,
so she definitely conveys that, but I don't get, like where she decides she's going to go down and talk to him. That should kind of be the empowering moment of, like, okay, I'm scared as hell. But I care about my kid and I have to do something and I love my husband and I want us all to get out of here. Like, what are we going to do? And none of that really comes through. It's just kind of, I'm meek the entire time. Now I'm scared and meek. And I'm like, there's just not a lot of versatility there.
Well, since you brought it up, let's talk a little bit about Kubrick, right? As a director, you could argue, is it misogynistic or is it some sort of, like, creative genius to, master manipulation, if you will, of like beating someone down in order to, like, get into a state of mind necessary for the character. You know, it's up to you. What do you think?
It's a hard no for me. I mean, there's a difference between creating atmosphere and getting somebody maybe agitated in the moment or scared in the moment so that you can get a singular shot. We know a lot of directors who do this and use different methods to make that happen. But what he did was bordering, and maybe you could just say it's like psychological warfare at that point. What he did to this poor woman, to the extent that her hair was falling out, you've gone way too far. When you're psychologically damaging a human, it is not right. And I think everyone on set knew how fucked up it was. And even, like, it was even Halloran even said, because they were on their, like, 60th take of him getting murdered, was, like, broke down in tears being like, what do you want from me? Like, what? you're not giving me anything. You're just saying, do it again, do it again. And if you just have someone screaming at you, like, you're not good, this isn't good, and not providing like helpful feedback, it's like that to me is where you cross the line of being eliciting an emotion and where you're just an asshole. And I think he was an asshole. I mean,
I hear it.
He's amazing, but he's an asshole.
Having been on sets, I have found that a lot of times the best performances come when actors have physically and emotionally like broken, because you're at the end of a 12-hour day, you're exhausted, you're doing the take over and over again because you have, if the director's telling you it's not working, you can't figure out why, there's miscommunication, and then all of a sudden in that moment it kind of like is raw and authentic because you no longer have your guard down, you're completely like you're just vulnerable. You don't know what to do, where to go. And all of a sudden, like, you're seeing something on the inside that normally doesn't come out when you still have some level of guard up, because we all do, even actors, like as much as they say yes to every moment, there's still limitations you have, which, you could argue that to truly get like a top-notch performance, you have to break. But I
look at how many directors don't do that though, and how many actors don't have to do that to get in those spots.
Is it necessary to achieve a phenomenal performance? Probably not. And it's easy to argue also that it's even harder and more respectable if you can get those performances without being a fucking cunt.
That's it. No, that is straight up. That's it for me. And again, like, I think where I feel like it again way passes the line is where if you've got someone coming to you saying like, I am not well, this is not good for me, and then you continue to abuse them, that's where I especially am like, all right, if someone's not sharing their limitations or setting boundaries or whatever, okay, maybe we can start arguing is it okay? Is it not okay? But I think where there's an issue is there was a very much vocalization from multiple people that this was going too far and it didn't stop. I think that's where I'm like, it's not okay. And I love, like, the thing is, I want to make it clear, I love Kubrick films. I love them. I think he's an amazing director. He pays so much attention to detail, and that is one of the absolute most, it's so fucking clear in this movie because every shot is just insane, down to the carpet used in the scenes. Like, everything is so well thought out, but it just feels like a black cloud over it when you have this horrific backstory that kind of ruins parts of it for me, but maybe not for you.
I think that's super fair. To his meticulous nature, like, it's insane to me that he wanted to shoot this movie entirely in sequence. I mean, that is like every director's dream.
Sorry, what?
Yeah, so he literally had like those entire sets pre-built, pre-lit, so as much as possible they could shoot in sequence, which is like insanity to ask for your crew and producers to provide the budget, to make that possible is pretty wild.
Jeez, OP.
But as if you're given that gift, my God, that is a opportunity.
Did he get close at all? I don't know how this was shot.
To my understanding, it was largely shot, in sequence, outside of, additional B teams, like shooting exteriors and things like that. Like those obviously were shot out of sequence because they're entirely different locations. They're not in a studio set, but
Kubrick still, I know he's not the cinematographer, but I have to imagine he has quite a lot of input in the way that things are shot.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you could probably speak to that a lot better than I could.
Yeah, I mean, he is the showrunner, and there's even behind the scenes moments where you see him with his little director's lens, like setting up the shots and saying, "Okay, let's bring camera over here." and it was effective. They made a lot of cinematic choices that were really effective, right? Like, I mean, for one, to be able to have such large sets like that and the budget to just blast the scenes with light, like creating that like overexposed, bright, snowy exterior on these, sets that are in a studio setting is pretty phenomenal. Like, watching the movie, you're hard pressed to think that they actually shot this in a studio because the sets are so huge.
I honestly didn't know that they didn't do this like outside because it looks legit.
It's phenomenal. I mean,
they must be doing it outside.
The exteriors are shot outside, except
was the hedge maze?
The hedge maze was a studio set.
It doesn't look like it. Oh my god, it doesn't look like it.
Like snow was made from like salt and foam or something. Like it was like. Pretty impressive. The actors were actually complaining that because of the lights, it was so hot that they were having to take off their big heavy winter jackets that they were running around in.
Oh, dang. Yeah.
I mean, it was a huge set. And
makes sense now that a child could run in just like a sweater. Now it makes, because I'm freezing just walking to my car, so that makes a lot of sense.
And he made a choice to shoot the hedge maze with a 9.8 millimeter lens, which is extremely wide, like insanely wide.
Yeah,
and the whole
that makes sense. Now you say that.
To make the hedge feel huge. And I thought it was
good choice.
Really worked because the hedge does feel freaking enormous. And
it's pretty though too, the way it's lit and like you said, how big it feels. It really is kind of gorgeous looking. Actually, especially though at the end, it looks really nice.
Yeah, I mean, outside of that, I think there's some. It was largely like a by the book, shot film. There were some iconic moments you get of like like that low shot looking up the door with Jack Nicholson leaning over, kind of. Unhinged, like that's iconic and will live.
I like the opener
in infamy forever. Yeah, the helicopter shot.
That's awesome.
Yeah, just very much giving you that like feeling of like spirits kind of like following this vehicle up the pass. Like, very iconic moments. I think it's funny and speaks to Kubrick's like level of expectation. He fired the first team that was sent out to go film shots in Colorado because like he was so underwhelmed by what they accomplished, and he went out and find this better aerial cinematographer.
Not even surprised, but oh my god!
I know, but I mean, he goes as far as like hiring the inventor of the Steadicam. It's somewhere in my notes. I'll have to find because he deserves the credit to accomplish a lot of these shots. And the fact that these are some of the first shots ever using a Steadicam is pretty impressive. They were like getting as radical as like setting the Steadicam up on a wheelchair as to get those really low like shots of the little like big wheel tricycle thing.
It's so good though, that paired with the carpet, paired with the twins, paired with the that is gorgeous. Again, those are the areas I will never ever give this movie a hard time at because they are stunning.
Yeah, 100%. I think one of the most effective moments of cinematography is when you're following Danny into the big hall, the grand hall where his dad's working and where his mom's at. And, he kind of like turns to reveal like it's from the back. So you don't see Danny's face, and he turns to reveal like the bruises and he's like shining. And, that to me was a really powerful moment of cinematography, that like kind of slow creeping feeling of moving with him and, and the actor kind of being hidden from camera for a moment. Those are powerful moments that I thought, were really impressive.
And some of those extended shots are just really nice too. Like when they're first going through the hotel and stuff and it's just panning through. Like it's just, I mean, that's a technical feat. It's not easy to do. So I feel like those shots always should get a lot of credit because it's
and
hard
that's what you
to
can
do
do
something where you're not cutting away. Yeah. But it's just impressive. Like, that's a good part. Now, I did want to ask you, because you've not read the book, I was curious, what is your take on how the shine, quote unquote, is kind of shown in the film? Like, did you feel like it made sense? Did you like it? Because obviously I have a lot more context now, having read the book, on what that kind of is and what that looks like, and the way it's a lot more prevalent in the book than it is in the movie. And I actually was kind of disappointed going back and seeing how kind of little that actually means, but I don't know if that was intentional or not. So I was curious, as a having not read the book, like, what your feeling was about how that was represented.
I would have to say that, having not read the book, that I could imagine the shine being a bit of a letdown, because it does not really play much into the story. It has no consequence at all. I think at the best it provokes Jack Nicholson's character to enter room 237, and that's it. That's like, okay, and I guess it brings up Halloran to go see if anything's wrong. But to what end, right? Obviously, he just, the second he walks inside, he gets offed. Like, what was the fucking point? So.
Thank you for saying that. I was really nervous about, I didn't even know if you were going to get there in that sentence. Like, I didn't know if you were going there in that sentence, but I'm just happy to hear you say that, because I feel like his character, you could literally cut out the entire second part of his character, like, aside from when he first meets Danny, and it has no consequence other than he gets the vehicle there. That is the only singular reason he exists in the movie. And it is, to me, is so fucking stupid. I actually loathe this part more than probably anything else that I think that's fair. Complained about.
It's also the slowest moments in the film, where we're just hearing him converse with the Rangers or whoever they are, the cops, and then driving up the mountain. Like, it is the most dead screen time that exists in this film. Which is unfortunate. I think the only thing that the shining moments add are those horrific imageries, the horrific images. So, it does open the door for, the blood spilling out of the elevator, or the twins being butchered, which were beautiful and iconic. And, I heard that were as difficult to accomplish in terms of the blood spilling out of the elevators as, probably any shot in cinema history, where it essentially took them a year to get that shot right, in the terms of the
Kubrick's right, which is a lot.
But the quality of the blood, the way that it spills out of the elevator and splashes through, it's iconic, and there's a reason it's iconic. So.
Oh, no, I think the imagery works. I think the ghosts work. I think where I feel a little let down with The Shine is it is such, obviously, I mean, the book is called The Shining. It's a pretty important part of the story. And it was a bummer to not see that really represented well or explained well. Okay, so in the book, though, and this is spoilers, so if you haven't read the book and you don't want this spoiled, skip the next, couple minutes and you'll be good to go. So Halloran in the book is such a prevalent character. Him and Danny connect, and then Danny is the one who kind of sends a help signal through the shine. And then what is super stressful about the book is you're cutting between Halloran trying to get there all the way from Florida to what's happening in the hotel. And so there's this time element that's really, really stressful. And it's cool because on his journey, he meets other people who have the shine, and they kind of pick up that he's something's wrong and I just know it. And the guy's I just know things too sometimes, but everybody's shine is kind of different. So some people Danny's a super strong shine, and that's why the hotel wants him so bad. and O'Halloran's is kind of strong, but like the other people he meets maybe not as strong. And so it's really stressful, and him trying to get up there is this really, because it's like the hotel's trying to stop him from getting there. So it's really, really good thematically and very stressful, and it's such a bummer to see none of that occur. We don't even get him saying like it's going to be horrifying to get up there or see him stressed out. He's just kind of plowing through. It's not like, it looks like me on a regular winter day driving, not like a giant snowstorm. So the anxiety isn't really there. And also, spoiler again, his character doesn't die in that, and it all makes a lot more sense that he doesn't die, and they have this very beautiful emotional connection. And it's just such a bummer to not see any of that play out. And I just feel like they had the runtime, but they fixated so heavily on this ending with expressly like Jack Nicholson that we lost so much opportunity to get some of these book elements in. I get that's clearly not what he wanted to focus on, but it bums me out. And the ending is so emotional in the book. Like, I cried reading the book, and I would never do that watching the movie.
Wow. All right. Okay.
It's so sad. Like, it's like Jack and Danny, like Jack's been taken over by the hotel again. Spoiler from the books. Jack gets taken over by the hotel, essentially. And he's like, has this kind of moment of clarity with Danny. He's like, you gotta go. And Danny's like, I'm not leaving you, and like holds his hand. And it is like heartbreaking, because you have this dad who loves his kid that's trying to make this kind of last stand to protect him. And he kind of chooses to kill himself, which then the hotel is able to kind of take over his body. That part's not important. But point being, like, there's just this huge family component to it that you do not get in this movie. They're all separated in a way by the end of this movie. And I know it's not fair to compare a book to a movie, but it really bums me out how much emotion and depth is in that book, and you just get none of it in the movie. Even if it's a stunning set piece, it just doesn't give you the feelings.
Okay, well, I think that's
I'll get off my pedestal of the book now. I'll get off.
All right. I think that's all very fair. I have not read the book, but where I do think that the movie goes that probably isn't in the book is some new themes that were worked in that, Kubrick ran with. And
do tell.
Yeah. So, of course, I think this is kind of coming out of the documentary Room 237, which I think is kind of mandatory to watch. But I think, take it with a grain of salt, because I think they're off base.
Big grain of salt, but yeah.
I think there's a lot of like wild, ideas thrown in there. But I think at the very least, one or two of them seem to ring pretty loud and clear as like obvious intentional things that Kubrick was trying to accomplish. And first and foremost being that this is like the movie is an allegory for, the American like Indian genocide, basically, of like white man coming to the Americas and, destroying a people. And the imagery, the themes are pretty overt at times. There's a ton of like native decor, and the fact that it's mentioned the hotel was built on an Indian burial ground. I think Jack literally says something like the white man's burden, while he's like sitting at the bar.
Yes, which I rolled my eyes so hard when I heard that. But yes.
I mean, and even I guess it's not in this movie poster, but the movie poster at the time says the tide of terror that swept across America. Like, that's the tagline for it, right? Like, is that not the, white man genocide of American Indians? And, so I think it's quite clear, and you get, I think the idea is like portraying the trauma.
The racism is in the book, but that is also
so that could have been
that
like
part is actually there.
The idea that sparked it. Now, where all the characters fit in that is, perhaps debatable, right? I think there's a lot of interesting ways like to interpret this, but at the very least, I think Jack clearly represents the white man in the newly found Americas exploiting a people. So
Yeah, and that's definitely, I mean, that is definitely like a big departure from the book. That's not, and like maybe somebody's going to message and say like, no, you're really off base about the book, but I got a much more family, like at the core kind of it, alcoholism being a prevalent theme throughout as well. But not so much that, but I can see what you mean by the decor is very specifically picked out for the hotel to represent exactly what you're saying. So I have heard that. I think that one is fairly reasonable. Like you said, in terms of the characters, I just don't know enough behind that theory to justify any of it, but I do think that has some founding for sure. Yeah, right. I mean, you could start to like get creative with interpreting like Halloran's role, like who he is, and also literally
like
not
Wendy
a character in this
film. Exactly. But now some of the theories that might be a little off base, like suggesting that the moon landing was fake. Like, yeah, I was waiting for you to get there. I think it's sprinkled in there, and it could be a joke by Kubrick. I honestly couldn't. I think it's a joke. Yeah, I think that's so fucking crazy. But what do I know? For the carpet to so specifically look like the launch pad of the Apollo mission, and the sweater being the Apollo rocket ship, like it seems like very clearly intentional. Now, the question is like, is this just a joke, or was Kubrick actually hired by the CIA to fake a moon landing? And like, what do I know? Maybe in 30 years, the footage is going to come out and I'm going to be like, well, okay, the conspiracy theorists were right. But I have to say, when I was watching this part of the documentary, my eyes were like almost stuck in the back of my head where I could not believe some of the things people were saying. Like, that is exact. I'm like, you have spent far too much time with this film. You got to step away for a minute, maybe get outside a bit, and we'll see. But like I said, I could be wrong. I don't know the answer to this, so maybe I'm wrong. But I was not a big fan of that. Yeah, I agree. And then there were like all kinds of weird like gender or like masculinity themes that were suggested that I thought were pretty unfounded, really. Like, and if anything, we're probably more of a like Rorschach test of the person suggesting the idea. Like, oh my gosh. Yes, that's a perfect way to phrase it. And I'm not saying like clearly there's dynamics going on and that she is like, because we are talking the 70s, and yes, we have a bit of a shift in the culture, but there's still a patriarchal society today. So like, I'm not saying that gender politics don't play a part in any film ever. Of course it does. It's inherently ingrained in our society. But to say the whole film is like an allegory for this or that, I just feel like you're like plucking at it, and it's just a little too much for me. But right. And I love that stuff, but come on, guys. Come on, take it easy. So I'm curious your thoughts on like the VFX and gore. So they're really solid. I just wish there were more. I mean, like, Halloran's death, I loathe it for 100 different reasons. I hated it the first time I watched it. Just because of the, I can't figure out why they did it. My only guess is it's abrupt and shocking, but it's stupid at the end of the day to me. So that one is always just I always kind of pardon that one off because I don't like it. But the Grady twin shots of them, I mean, the cutting back and forth is so good. I love that so much. Yes. And I can't decide. I think they're actually creepier when they're standing upright than when they're down on the ground and dead. They're creepy little kids. Agreed. I mean, it's iconic, and maybe it's the juxtaposition of the two images, right? Like associating those creepy twins. Sure. And the voice is great, right? Like, come play with us forever and ever. And I'm like, no, girl. I will not be doing that. That's all really solid. Obviously, the skeletons are a little hokey. I had kind of completely forgotten about that. I was going to ask. Now, it's not great. I think the fun thing about the bathtub scene, which I've never been a huge fan of, it kind of takes elements from the book, but I don't know. It doesn't work like super. I don't really get the point of it, I guess, other than
I don't really get, he's seduced by the hotel in the most literal way, but we're already kind of there. So I've never really understood thematically why that existed.
Yeah.
But I like this bloated, rotting corpse versus just skeletons in party suits. I think that's a lot more effective. I mean, I get you can't do that for everything. That would be crazy. But I think it's a little bit of a bummer to have some of these really great effects and this skin stuff, and it's so gnarly looking, and it looks good. It looks really good, and the Grady twins look really good. And then you get, again, Party City skeletons, and it's like, why though? Like, why would we go? Or even like Grady though that always confused me. Grady has like what looks like an axe wound, but he's supposed to have shot himself. So I always found that also kind of confusing. But it still looks good.
Did confuse me too. Because even for an axe wound, it wasn't that like violent of a look.
No,
like,
but it looked cool.
I couldn't quite place it either. Like, maybe the like exit wound of the shotgun. Like, first of all, like you put a shotgun in your mouth, like your
head's gone,
blowing off, like
yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know what the thought was behind that.
Nah, it was a little odd.
I think one thing that I was also mixed on was at times was working well. At times I thought was like kind of lazy. I don't know if there's a better way, or uninspired.
Okay.
Was the music. The score. I thought it relied way too heavily on just like ambient tones and like like pulsing like beats, like at times that sound like a heartbeat, just very cliche. And then like violin trills, like like it just like at times it was working, but it just felt like a bit overkill. But also at times it was the only thing really driving the tone of the movie,
Yes,
so
yes.
it was necessary, but I thought it left a huge room for improvement.
I think though, like you said, the times it works so well. Like when you get that opening and it's just that boom, boom, like it's
now
so
that's iconic.
big. Like it's so good with these huge overhead shots. So it all fits really well. Or I believe I could be misremembering. It gets a little stringy while she's pulling the papers, and I think that works well. But I think at other times, like you said, when it's utilized, I wasn't as big of a fan. I think you're right. It was a hard one because it was kind of a mixed bag. When it hit hard. but then most of the time, it was just kind of like, okay, it's there. That's all we got. Like it never drove a scene. Or it overly drove a scene in a way where you're like, I feel like we should have a little bit more to work with than just the soundtrack leading us to the conclusion this thing is supposed to be scary. Like that's a little much. I did want to pick your brain too. I know we don't want this to go too long, but I did want to pick your brain a little bit about like color scheme and set design wise. I just feel like I was kind of blown away almost in every scene. I don't feel like there were many sets in it where I didn't like it. I mean, that bathroom, that just insanely red and white bathroom, it's such a pretty picture in a way. Same with the Art Deco green bathroom in room, was it 237? That looked so good. You could take a billion pictures and I'd look at all of them and be so happy. And obviously we already talked about the maze, but that stuff I just loved. Was there a set in particular that you enjoyed, or you were like, that's amazing, or it really helped move the film, anything like that?
That's super interesting. I mean, I was kind of blown away by the scale and the meticulous detail, down to like the coffee cans selected to go on shelves, right? And things like that, right? And the carpet, like everything was chosen.
Oh, the carpet. How did I not bring that up? The carpet.
Well,
iconic.
You had previously. Yeah. But, and, like the kind of stained glass on some of the windows was real beautiful. So, color palette did jump out to me as like, very carefully selected, mostly not to become a distraction. I felt like it was, kind of muted, neutral. And then you get to like if you will, the heart or the soul of the building, room 237, and it kind of explodes all of a sudden. Like, what is this like secret, within the hotel? So I thought that was a pretty interesting choice. There's obviously a lot of themes of like a maze happening, and people have discussed the impossible nature of like the floor plan, how Danny's like riding his bike around and they're like, it's a physical impossibility, but also having been on sets, it's like, well, you work with what you have. Like there's certain limitations, like you're going to shoot like in the best location possible. Sometimes if let's say you're in a house set, like maybe the downstairs is a completely separate location than the upstairs that you're shooting in, so it's like there's going to be certain like I was just a little skeptical about that like theory, I guess, hypothesis.
I think it could add to it, I guess. Like you said, I don't read as much into this as other people do. Like sometimes I'm like, we're pulling this apart in a way where we have to also add in human error as a realistic possibility. And as meticulous as this director is, come on, like no one is flawless. There's going to be accidental things that happen. So to me, I've never looked super hard in the floor plan, but I was like, if that is the case and that is intentional, I think it adds to that. You have the hotel is alive in a way, and that the hotel shines, and that would make sense. So I don't think it's something that has to be like overly looked at, but I think can add to it for sure. I've seen that too. I've never looked into it enough though I'm not a floor plan designer. I do not know like what makes sense or doesn't, but
it's not like I would have ever noticed it. It had it not been pointed out to me, right? It's completely absurd.
Same.
Now, given the meticulous nature of Kubrick and the enormous budgets and, the like genius he provides, you could say, I want to point out to all filmmakers out there that some of the most iconic moments were in fact, stolen. I'm sorry, paid homage to by, Kubrick. Like,
I like that.
Now, perhaps what is the most iconic moment of the film, Jack Nicholson, like axing his way through the door, is directly ripped
Johnny
off
Carson,
of the Phantom Carriage in 1921 silent film. And
I see the actual. I thought you meant the line, but yes,
the scene, the Phantom Carriage 1921 by Victor, Swedish heritage here, Victor Schulstrom, right? Like so close to our last name.
Oh, look at that!
And you can, go watch the movie. I want to watch the whole thing, but I did just like scrub through to see the exact scene, and the similarities are inadmissible. Like it is directly ripped off of that movie for sure. So as a filmmaker, don't be afraid. Go out there and steal from everybody, please. And thank you, because
and people might just think it's your idea anyway. So
original idea is simply the combination of two or more previous ideas. I mean, I'm a real believer in that. And so go steal, but give it your own unique new twist. I just want to throw that out there. Now, what the fuck's up with the furry? There's a furry scene.
Yeah, so actually I had to, it was so funny. So I finished the book, and then, so when I work with and I were talking about, because she's a huge Stephen King fan, and we were talking about like, we're not a big fan of the movie, blah, blah, blah. I already said that enough. And she's like, and what was up with that scene? And I was just racking my brain going, why was this a thing? And then hang on, because I did find this on IMDb. Okay, so this is IMDb. Take it with a grain of salt.
Okay.
But allegedly, this says the scene where Wendy is running and sees a room where a man in a bear costume is having sex with the former hotel manager was never explained in the movie, leaving audiences very confused as to why it was there. In the book, during it should be a New Year's party at the hotel, but it says during a year at the hotel. Feels like a misprint there. The manager, I see. They were right. During a year at the hotel, the manager had a secret homosexual affair with a party guest dressed in a dog costume, which is the closest explanation. And I do remember the dog guy being in the book. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe that was the best that I could get over that too. Cause it is, I don't know why it needs to be there. What I like to
just a little
about the book is you get
of it.
A little bit more of the ghost popping in and out. And I kind of wish we had gotten a little bit more of that because they almost feel really specific until you get to the party scene. Like it almost just feels like Grady and the twins and the woman, and that's kind of it. So it's kind of, I like the party scene. I wish we had gotten like a little bit more of that because to show how big the ghosts are, how many there are in the hotel would have been nice to get a light on. But yeah, that was it was an odd choice. I don't know how else to phrase it. It was an odd choice.
I mean, I can get in terms of like creating some like bizarre imagery to heighten the surrealness of the hotel, right? I think that's kind of a fair choice. I don't know what you have left to say, but to maybe in wind down here, what I would be very curious out of Stanley Kubrick's iconic films, Eyes Wide Open, 2001 Space Odyssey. Sorry. Eyes Wide Shut, 2001 Barry Lyndon and Shining. How's Shining stack up?
Well, the funny thing is one of my favorites is actually Lolita, which is not everyone's favorite, but also a situation where I really enjoyed the book, though I think the movie and the book, obviously the book is quite old, kind of gloss over the nuances of grooming and pedophilia that we don't really get in those movies. But I think the dynamics are super interesting in the Lolita. So actually that's oddly one of my favorite Kubrick films.
And we can throw in Clockwork Orange for sure, right?
Oh my God. And Clockwork Orange is, the fact that at the end of that film, you're rooting for that character is probably the most fucked up thing I've ever felt in my life. But it just tells, like, that's how good the storytelling, acting, everything is in that. So like I said, I think my issue when it all boils down to it, and again, I want to preface, like this was pre-reading the book, it just got worse with reading the book, was that I always felt like there's such a lack of good pacing in it and such a lack of the family dynamic and the characters that you actually give a shit about. And it's such an important piece of filmmaking and storytelling. And for you to get on board with these characters, and there's no wrestling with Jack on this. He's just a descent into madness almost before from the first shot. And that sucks because I don't care about this character. I'm not worried about this character. He never goes back and forth being like, he has the one scene where he says, I would never hurt him, and then immediately goes and drinks. And it's just not enough for me to feel like there's a wrestling within this character. They don't explain the backstory of why he's fired or what happened there or how detrimental his drinking was to make him drinking such a big thing that happens. So it's just lower on the end for me because I think the storytelling and some of those other things is so much stronger. Even with Clockwork Orange having the most bizarre, like, linguistics involved that at points you can't even understand what people are saying, I'm thematically getting more from it. So I don't know where it would rate in his entire filmography. It's just not super high for me. I guess as someone who likes this movie clearly like more than I do, where does it rate for you on his list?
Number 5. I don't know. Maybe
I was like, really?
I just hacked this list together here once I shouted out the question.
Oh, you son of a gun. You didn't tell me ahead of time. And also, I like Full Metal Jacket better, too.
Oh, fuck. Full Metal Jacket. How could I forget? Shit. Oh, that's so hard. Yeah. That is so hard.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Okay.
That's a really good one.
So I think easily the top 3 are 2001 Eyes Wide Shut, Full Metal Jacket, in my opinion.
I
I think Clockwork Orange.
Have you seen Spartacus too? Because I have not.
I had not seen Spartacus. I have not seen Lolita. So sorry.
I just wanted to say I hadn't seen those, so I wanted to be fair. I haven't included those because I haven't seen them.
Yeah, so I do need to go watch them. But I think Clockwork Orange is extremely bold. I love the style. It was so iconic to me as a young filmmaker. But I do think it is exactly that. It's a young filmmaker, like, with something to prove. And I think his style has only gotten better in terms of the subtlety and scale when you think about like Eyes Wide Shut, 2001, Full Metal Jacket. But Clockwork Orange, I think, is like the solid fourth. It'd be hard for me to give you like a first, second, third out of 2001, Eyes, and Full Metal. Now, I think Barry Lyndon and The Shining kind of come in at a tie. Like Barry Lyndon,
seen that one yet, so I can't say. Yeah,
it's very intriguing film. It is slow paced, understated, but I heard this once, like this critique of it as like kind of like Barry Lyndon being like the original gangster story. I thought it was such an interesting interpretation of it that I've only seen it a couple times, but I want to go revisit and dissect a little further. I think it was a very ambitious movie to make in terms of what was involved and the set and and number of characters and so Shining, I think would probably come in some sort of like tie with Barry Lyndon as like fourth, fifth place on that list. That's just where I
feel
landing.
less crappy knowing it's not your like number one, and I've been such a dick about it. So like that makes me feel better.
Yeah, I mean there are just some. I mean, let's be honest, Kubrick's like done some like just phenomenal work and really, like I'm thinking of 2001, like some of the things that he did in terms of like building sets that rotate, to create such iconic imagery, like and he does this in The Shining with the steady cam and wheelchairs, like creating new cinematic feats. Like he goes on a very like large scale is where he operates and where his like ability lies, like his genius truly lies in like accomplishing scale and detail at the same time, I think.
Yeah, and I think you can attribute that to this film, and I think it's also okay to say that just because he is a well-established filmmaker doesn't mean that he wasn't problematic, and it doesn't mean that he didn't do a great job with this source material. Like, I think it's okay to think both things. It's okay to think he's an amazing director, but also a problem. And so, I don't know, this one is, a lot of folks I talk to, at least, who are, like, book lovers really struggle, but can also see that this is clearly, like, a very well-crafted film. No one I know has ever disputed that. I think story and character, where I see most people having an argument with this, and I think Stephen King summed it up really well. He said something of the nature of, the way the book ends is in like fire, and it's very, he said, I'm a warm guy. Kubrick is a very cold guy. He ends this in the winter. And yeah, but also he shaded King about his works and thinking he was too high in his step. And I think people love Stephen King as a human, so I don't think that's a super fair thing to say. Yeah. But also I'm clearly pretty biased because I love the book. So I guess for me, I would say I don't get the hype. I don't think I ever really will get the hype, but I also want to give it credit where credit is due. It is absolutely stunning. It is so meticulously done that choices that did work really well. There's just a lot to be left desired, where I don't think anyone's going to do this, and I don't say this often about films, especially as notorious as this, but I feel like this has potential to be remade that may be a little bit more faithful to the book. And I know they did it in like a 90s crappy TV series thing, but it's like, give it the budget and whatever. And apparently, I've not seen it, but apparently Flanagan did Dr. Sleep and added a ton of elements that were in the book that didn't make it to The Shining, and he put it in that. But I haven't seen it, so can't speak to it. But I guess I guess I just feel like we should be able to criticize this for the flaws, and I feel like it's kind of a taboo thing to do in the horror community. It's like, this is a perfect picture, you can't criticize it. I think we should be able to do that, and I highly recommend reading the book to get the more emotional impact, but also, like I said, and I'm just a broken record now, but I don't want to say it's completely without its merits and doesn't deserve its place in horror history. I completely understand why it does. It is iconic. I'm not going to say it's not, but like, let's just meet it with the criticism I feel it deserves. What are your wrap-up thoughts to it?
No, absolutely. Watch it, embrace it, love it, hate it, up to you.
Rate it.
I think, yeah, love it, hate it, rate it. But it's going to withstand the test of time.
Oh yeah, it already has. To be fair,
it has, and it is enjoyable for all audiences. Go watch the rest of Stanley Kubrick's films. They're
100%
equally iconic, if not more. So. Y'all, thank you so much for tuning back into.
That was a long one.
I know, the Pod Under Your Bed. This film really did deserve like that deep dive.
It did,
just if anything, just for its notoriety in pop culture. So, thanks again, y'all, and we cannot wait to see you next time for more.
Can't wait. I'm sure we got some fun themed ones for the holidays coming up, so it'll be fun. I can't promise that you're going to get the cinematic value you got in this one around holiday films, but we'll definitely make it fun regardless.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming to the Podcast Under Your Bed.
Bye.